both Zoom and YouTube. Those that are coming back for part two, that joined us in part one, as well as those that are here with us for the first time. Before we get into tonight's main topic, we want to recognize what is currently happening at this time with His Holiness Bhakti True Maharaj. We learned today that his health has made a turn for the worse. And we are all praying as a community of devotees and individually as devotees that Krishna, really protect him, as well as his disciples, his well-wishers, his friends, his godbrothers. Particularly all our love and prayers are really extended to Maharaj at this time. And we wanted to begin tonight with prayers to Lord Nrsingadev, and Balabhadra Prabhu will lead us in those prayers.
Namaste Narasimhaya, Namaste Narasimhaya, Pralada Lada Daine, Pralada Lada Daine, Hiranya Kasi Purvakshaha, Hiranya Kasi Purvakshaha, Shila Tanka Nakalaye, Shila Tanka Nakalaye, Ito Nisingha Parato Nisingho, Ito Nisingha Parato Nisingho, Yato Jato Jamitato Nisingha, Yato Yato Yamitato Nisingha, Bahir Nisingho Ridaye Nisingho, Bahir Nisingho Ridaye Nisingho, Narsimha Madhin Saranam Prapaje, Narsimha Madhin Saranam Prapaje, Tavakara Kamalavare Nakam Adbhuta Sringam, Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringam Kesavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadish Hare, Jai Jagadish Hare, Jai Jagadish Hare, Tavakara Kamalavare Nakam Adhuta Sringam, Dalita Hiranyakasipu Tanu Bringam Kesavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadish Hare, Jai Jagadish Hare, Jai Jagadish Hare, Jai Narsimhadev, Jai Narsimhadev, Narsimhadev, Jai Narsimhadev, Jai Narsimhadev, 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 Jai Narsimhadev, Jai Prahlad Maharaj, Jai Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya 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 Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Haribo, 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 Goda Haribo. Jai Nrsingadev Bhagavan ki. Jai Bhakta Prahlad Maharaj ki. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Jai His Holiness Bhakti Churu Maharaj ki.
Jai.
O Premanandi Hari Hari Bo.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Balabhaja Prabhu, for that beautiful prayer. Lord Nrsingadev. At the end of our night tonight, we'll also close it out with a prayer for His Holiness Bhakti True Maharaj as well. Thank you for that auspicious opening. Welcome to part 2 of our Can We Talk series. About 12 days ago, we had part 1 of Vaisnava views on racial disparities. And it was an eye-opening event, I think, for many. It was more than Haryashra Prabhu and Balabhaja Prabhu than we had actually anticipated. I think the participation and interest level from not just locally here in Philadelphia, but as it spread, throughout the country, really marked to us that this is such a significant event in the lives of devotees that the conversation needs to continue. And we wanted to say that the mood in which we are offering this is the mood of trying to strengthen Srila Prabhupada's family. That whenever we have an opportunity to remove barriers that exist in distributing Srila Prabhupada's mercy and bringing people closer to Krishna, we have to seriously take a look at those issues. And we have within our ability to handle them, address them, and change them. We should do so. We are in times right now where over the past month, we've seen a huge change in the social landscape of certain activities. We've seen monuments being torn down that have been there for 200 years. You drive by synagogues, churches, and instead of having their Bible verses on their front, it says Black Lives Matter, equality for all. We have Little League teams, my son's Little League team. It was named after an Irish town, but it was also the name of a judge in the South that had was known for voting for slavery. And they chose to change the name of that team. The city of Philadelphia declared a city holiday on June 19th for Juneteenth, which marked the day of the ending of slavery. So we're seeing a great momentum socially about this. And we also hear from the devotees that there's a feeling within them that our philosophy, if we are practicing properly, shall be free from these defects that we see in society, but at the same time, they're not. We're going to get into the issues. I'm going to start off by introducing our speakers, our facilitators, Balabhaja Prabhu and Haryashra Prabhu, and then we'll get into a little bit of a discussion. His Grace Balabhaja Prabhu is a disciple of His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. He was initiated in 1974. He served for 18 years as Temple President of Atlanta. 5 years he's been serving as Temple President of us here in Philadelphia. He's also the president of the Vedic Friends Society. He preaches he does urban preaching, urban outreach. He's very connected to what's going on within the landscape of the city and the urban environments. So we welcome Balabhaja Prabhu and thank you for joining us and agreeing to facilitate again tonight. And we also have Haryashra Prabhu. He's a disciple of His Holiness Satrup Goswami. He was initiated in 1978. He served in Philadelphia as a brahmachari. He grew up in Philadelphia. Served as a brahmachari, a book distributor, taking care of devotees, lived in the temple throughout the 80s. He's most well known for the Govinda's restaurant, in which he's run for, 2 decades, 2+ decades. The countless lives that he's touched through prasadam distribution and sharing Krishna consciousness with is amazing. He also has a depth of understanding and knowledge and practice of outreach within the urban communities. So we're really blessed to have these two devotees, these Vaishnavas, to help share with us today and help facilitate this discussion. I wanted to start off by asking Haryashra Prabhu to address a couple questions that came into us from last meeting. One of those questions is, and this really wasn't not meant for any harm, it was really for clarification, because this is Vaishnava views on racial disparities. There are some devotees that are wondering why we would invest time in this discussion. Are we simply just getting wrapped up in the bodily conception of life? Why not have a Bhagavad Gita class instead of having this discussion? So these are some of the questions that came forth. I think they were open and honest and heartfelt. I don't think they were antagonistic. And I think in order to, again, strengthen our understanding in society, well, we need to take a look at it. So I'm going to start off with Haryashra Prabhu. He would like, I think, to discuss this particular topic.
Okay. Hare Krishna family.
Haribo.
Anyway,
Or you need to, I think, raise the volume a little bit.
what did you say?
You need to raise the volume a little bit.
Oh. Okay.
Just move a little closer to your computer, Prabhu.
Thank you, Mother.
That's better.
Is that better, Drona?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm not going to waste time. There's 2 points, and one point is, as Drona said, a lot of older devotees or seasoned devotees, they have the question, why? You know, one of the basic things that Srila Prabhupada and Lord Krishna discussed is that we're not our bodies, we're spirit soul. And even when the devotees ask these questions, I don't think that the devotees are asking these questions with a negative intent. The devotees care about this movement and this society. They care that Srila Prabhupada's mission doesn't become derailed by, you know, certain sentiments and things that have taken place during this time. So I take all these different inquiries as very valid and sincere. The one thing I like to say is to connect it all is that for me, the most important thing, the most wonderful thing that's happened in my life is something happened that changed the whole trajectory of my life. And that's that one time as a young man, I went out to a disco and I did a few things that a young man who's raised as a Christian shouldn't have done. And when I got back home, I told my brother of all the things I did. He said that I was becoming a bonehead. And he said that you're going to have to go with me tomorrow to the Hare Krishna temple. So I don't know if that was my atonement, my punishment, or what, but I was so freaked out that I had to go to the temple. But anyway, I went, and going to the ISKCON temple in Philadelphia changed everything for me. It changed my life. I found that the ISKCON society was the most wonderful place. I felt the same love that I felt in my family, except it was so much deeper. It was so profound because it was connected with Krishna. And then I got to meet Srila Prabhupada, which I thought was wonderful. But that was the first time. But when I met Prabhupada the next time, through the grace of his devotees, through reading the purports, the Bhagavatams would come out, and the devotees would just read, we'd read all the Bhagavatams. And I realized that was Srila Prabhupada speaking. And then I fell in love. I thought, what a kind person. The compassion, the affection. It was just unbelievable that one person could know so much and risk everything, risk his life to come over here to bring this Krishna consciousness to us. So ISKCON is very important to me. Srila Prabhupada is the best thing that's ever happened to me. But right beside that of Srila Prabhupada, which I also have to be honest about, was meeting Prabhupada's devotees. I had never met people who had such a devotion, and they were so fixed on carrying out the orders of Srila Prabhupada. So together, this just made an environment, an atmosphere, which was filled with the things that I was looking for. And I'm from the 60s and the 70s, but in this place, all that affection and that understanding, not only was it there, but it was being given in abundance. Now, I don't know if a lot of you have experienced all that intense affection in ISKCON, but I have. Therefore, when the devotees ask, meaning the devotees ask to talk about something that's important to them, these aren't just anybody. These are Prabhupada's grandchildren. These devotees that are speaking to us, they're very wonderful. And I feel as though they deserve the opportunity to feel the same affection and attention that I felt coming to ISKCON. So that's our first point. We're trying to take the pulse of what's happening, give whatever Krishna consciousness we have, these are devotees, and we just have to, I say to the senior man, just let's trust, because our movement is built on trust, love and trust. Just have a little trust and let the process work. And I think that you'll see through the process that the devotees are lovers of Srila Prabhupada. They're lovers of this movement. But there's some things that are unsettled and they need to be said by them. Saying that, I received also a call from a devotee, and the devotee was explaining how happy they were that Philadelphia ISKCON was getting involved like this. And so since this is a young devotee that grew up here and is now an adult in Krishna consciousness, I sent back a note, well, if you have anything to say, let me hear what you have to say. So together, we're a group, Balabhadra, Jonah, together we asked if we could have permission to read this to you, and the answer was yes. So I'd like to share this. This is the reply. This is such an important topic, and I'm so happy and proud that our temple is discussing it. It would be easy to brush it off. You're not your body. But that doesn't, change the fact that people, devotees, are facing this ugliness every day. Being in a white body, I feel strongly that I need to listen, learn, support, and try to be better every day. I know we have racial divides at the temple, and it's upsetting. We are one of a few ISKCON temples that have Lord Jagannath, Lord Balaram, and Subhadra as our front and center main deities. As soon as we walk into the temple room, we see black, white, yellow. Maybe he's given us such a basic and easy slap in the face, sign to get along so we can serve him humbly. So I thought that was so sweet. And this is what we're dealing with. The devotees are so nice. As I was listening to these devotees last week, I had to keep myself calm down because I wanted to jump in there and embrace them. So all I'm saying is Krishna even gave Arjuna the opportunity to express his point of view. Arjuna backed it up with Shastra, but still Krishna let him speak. And then he instructed him, and Arjuna heard and understood. So we want to do the same. Now I was telling you about all that love and affection that was there from Srila Prabhupada and his disciples. And I'm telling you, I'm not spreading peanut butter. I'm not just making it thick. This is really true. Other than that, I'm not here. Because if it's not going to be nice, I wouldn't have stayed. But one of those devotees who's here with us tonight is Balabhadra Prabhu. Balabhadra is actually one of the caretakers of Prabhupada's mission, taking care of Prabhupada's devotees. So I've had my 2 minutes, more than my 2 minutes. I need to be quiet. I'm like the appetizer. It's time to have the entree. Let's get Balabhadra Prabhu on and let's hear from him. Hare Krishna.
Jai Haryasha Prabhu. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you, Prabhu.
Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaudavan Vitarani Nirvishesh Kashunyabari Pashadrishtani. So the question that's actually on the table is, and don't mind me looking down, I'm looking at a few notes. Why and how should we view the Black Lives Matter movement? Black Lives Matters movement. As Haryasha pointed out, we have a wonderful movement full of love, full of compassion, full of joy, but sometimes we're not expert at how to convey that to all classes of people. I know when I first came to the temple, the first day, because I came from my job, I was working on a street called 14th Street, and the temple was on 13th Street. So I could actually walk from my job to the temple every day. I used to go every day for lunch. I go and chant rounds and hang out with devotees. But the first day I went there, I was afraid to go because I didn't know what Hare Krishna was. I knew I was interested because I had seen a book, I saw in the back of Godhead magazine an advertisement for Easy Journey to Other Planets. And I was into the whole mystical, universe thing and all that, extraterrestrials. So I was excited to go to the temple, very excited. I had my little blue uniform on, and I probably was a little intoxicated because I used to get high a lot at work. So I went to the temple, and this is true, it took me a week going back and forth because I was afraid to go up to the door. I smelled the incense. I was just afraid, didn't know what to do. So when I finally went there and knocked on the door, it was during Bhagavatam class. And nobody turned around to look at me. No one. And I was a little almost like, maybe they don't care. But one white American Mataji, and I want to change that terminology, a devotee in a white body. It's kind of hard to say white American or this and that, but a devotee in a female white body, Mother Sukshma Rupini, ran to the door. And she smiled so beautifully and just folded her hands and said, Hare Krishna, welcome. I melted on the front porch. I just melted. It was just so beautiful. And that image was in my mind. It kept me excited about the temple because everyone else was too busy. The brahmacharis were busy. This one was busy. That one was busy. But she took time with me. And something I didn't mention the last time, I lived in the urban parts of Atlanta in the projects. And Sukshma Rupini, she cared so much about me and my family because I had a wife and son at that time. She would get on the city bus, come all the way to my home in East Point in the projects, totally a Black community, no fear, to train me up in Krishna consciousness. It was just very beautiful. So then when I think about why should we care about Black Lives Matters? And I was discussing this with Haryasha the other day. I kind of discussed a little bit about it. And I had this vision all week. It just kept coming to my mind. This idea of Black lives. And I know it's difficult for a lot of devotees because a lot of people are saying all lives matter. Why don't we just say all lives matter? And that's a fact. All lives matter. So I had to put it into some type of context in order for me to feel more comfortable about thinking how to help people who are suffering right now, outside the scope necessarily of just saying, chant Hare Krishna, here's Prasadam, here's the books, get on with it. Because we have to deal with the fact that they're hurting. So when I put it in this particular context, and it's based on the verse from Bhagavad Gita, and I'll read it. Chapter 14, text 4, Sarva Jonishu Konteya, Murtaya Sambhavantiya, Tasam Brahma Mahat Jonir, Aham Bija Prada Pita. And translation is, it should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material world, and that I am the seed-giving father. So the way I visualize that is that we're all in the same family because we have the same father. This past weekend, we had a virtual family reunion of my family. And it was amazing how many people were there. And the moderator tied it to each one of the members of our family who had passed away, my mother and father, his brother, so on and so forth. And it was just wonderful being connected. And my youngest granddaughter, who's 5 years old, she came on and she said at the end, I want to say something. I am so happy to be with my family. I'm so glad to be with my family. And she sang a song to everybody, We Are the World. Some of you might know that song. And everyone was like amazed. So when you have that family spirit, you tend to want to extend yourself more. But if you don't see that someone's in your family, you say that's somebody else's problem. So why should we be concerned about Black lives? So I put it in this context. And I have a brother who has Down syndrome, and he's 64, I think 64, 65 years old. People thought he would not live to be 50, but he's like 60 something years old. And he came on the call, and everybody focused on him, even though, he's not looking exactly beautiful and all that, but everybody focused, and they gave him a big welcome because he's in our family. So when one member of the family is in distress or in need or confused or lost, the rest of the family, if they call themselves a family, come to their service, come to their rescue, do everything they can to help. So we know without a shadow of a doubt that the African American community, because of the 200 plus years of slavery, or whatever number that is, of slavery, being without their connection to their homeland, no resources, working for free, not building up any resources, and then finally achieving freedom from slavery in the late 1800s. I also found out that my grandfather was a slave. That kind of shocked me when I heard that recently, because I didn't know it. So they're kind of behind trying to catch up with the rest of society. So then people sometimes say, well, why are Black people so concerned? Why are they so upset? Because they were deprived of all those years of progress in society. They're our family, and they're struggling. Should we not try to help them? Whether you call it Black Lives Matters or whatever name you want to give it, this group of people, African Americans, in one sense, because they're family, we should extend ourselves. That's just one concept. So I wanted to put that on the table for further discussion. I'm not saying it's an authoritative concept. It's just the way I was feeling this past week, and I wanted to share that. Another thing real quick, it's about targeting our preaching efforts. We all know that when Srila Prabhupada came to America, the first group that he really had success with was the hippie generation, which was primarily white-bodied persons, disinfected, disenfranchised, dissatisfied with society, and Prabhupada saw some hope in them, and he lifted them up. All the original devotees pretty much came from that group. There was a focus on that group. Also in San Francisco, there was a focus on the hippie generation, and it was successful. And another point along with that, I'm getting to the end, so don't worry, is Lord Nityananda and Haridas Thakur, they targeted Jagai and Madai. They saw these two debauched persons, and they concluded that if we can lift them up, then the whole world will understand the mercy of Lord Chaitanya and the power of the holy name. So they targeted. So if we're going to say on one hand that there's so many problems in the Black community, there's crime, there's this, there's that, then if that's the case and they're our family members, then we should try to assist in some way with our Krishna consciousness and with whatever resources we have with our different communities to try to lift up that community. So I won't go into great detail, but as Drona and Haryasha pointed out, I've done some work in the urban communities, and I know for a fact that we can bring Krishna consciousness to those communities, but there's a problem. And I discovered that a little bit this week when I was asking a devotee in an Indian body, why are there not more Black people in the movement? And he gave me some nice examples. And one of the examples is the fear of the Black community. And he told me a story how when he first moved to a city, he saw an advertisement for buying, I think, a tabla or something like that, but it ended up being in a black community. So when he went there, he was afraid. So I said, Prabhu, you need to understand, I'm in a black body. In the 70s, I was dropped off in Mississippi parking lots, Alabama parking lots, Tennessee parking lots, alone, totally white communities. You think I was not afraid? I tell you all right now, I was very afraid because I knew what it meant to be in the South and to be black. In fact, one time a policeman stopped us in Dothan, Alabama somewhere. He said, boy, you got a problem. He said, you got two problems. I said, what? You're black and you're in the South. That was the problem. But we were fearless to do that. So we can't say it that we're afraid of the black community, but that's not the way to approach it. We should have compassion on the African American communities as well as all other communities. So on that note, I'll stop because we should understand that we have an opportunity presented to us by Srila Prabhupada and Krishna to lift up not only that community, African Americans, of course, that is the focus now, and we should do our best to work there, to lift up that community with Krishna consciousness. Let them become part of the family again, as Haryasha pointed out so beautifully. They're part of the family. I was part of the family when I was living outside the temple. I didn't know that you were my family. I didn't know that. And then when it was explained to me that this is your family, it changed my life. So let us think very deeply how we can expand this compassionate nature of this movement to the suffering people of society, and especially the ones who are suffering the most. Try to help the best that we can. So I'll stop there because I want to make sure we have enough time to hear from all of you. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you both, Haryashra Prabhu and Balabhadra Prabhu, for that opening. We want to open it up for some conversation. Last time we had devotees speak on this particular topic, how they were feeling, and we want to continue with that. Any devotees that want to express their hopes, that maybe they have had success or have ideas of how to extend Krishna consciousness movement into African American communities that have been neglected in preaching efforts, primarily throughout America. We invite you to come forth and share with us some of your ideas and some of your successes, maybe some of your challenges. What I do want to say is that we're going to take people by raising their hand. And if you don't know where the raise a hand button is, you can write that you have a question in the chat box. Now, the chat box is going to be directed only to the host. So it's not going to be made public to everybody. We got some feedback last time that the chat box was on fire and it became a little bit of a distraction. So we just, in order to keep people focused and listening to the speaker, we just have the chat box focused toward the host. So there's two ways if you want to raise your hand through Zoom, or just type in the chat box you have a question or that you want to speak. Just type that in and we'll get to you. Okay, so we have Mahaguna Devi Dasi. She was the first to raise her hand here. Please unmute yourself.
Hare Krishna. I am Mahaguna, and I am
Mahaguna.
Where are you from, Mahaguna?
Atlanta, Georgia. And me and Balabhadra Prabhu go way back from 1987. I've known him. Actually, he was my first friend when I came to Atlanta. So I guess, so I'm a very opinionated, so I will share a couple of opinions about it. I fundamentally, ISKCON as an organization, to be very blunt, and I try to, say this in any opportunity, and obviously people with a voice need to really be speaking, and I'm very busy with my work and stuff like that, but I do have long conversations with Balabhadra Prabhu. So fundamentally, I think we have a systemic problem. Like they have a systemic problem within in US when it comes to Black people. And I've been doing a lot of research about, why a Black person feels Black Lives Matter when people come and say all lives matter. So, a couple of things. Number one, just to give you a quick context of my understanding, the reason there was a show I watched where they said that the Black Lives Matter in America is because Blacks came to the United States as slaves. Whereas the other people, whether they are white bodies, red bodies, or brown bodies, I don't know, whatever. All other non-African Americans, they did not come here as slaves. Systematically, there is a problem within the US where white privilege and when it comes to Indian bodies, typically 99% of them are coming here with some privilege in the sense that they have education, money, things like that. So fundamentally, from a Black perspective, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter is such a big, powerful thing now is because of the oppression and all of that stuff that Blacks have endured from the time they came into this country. And that is still prevalent. And it kind of has moved over to, from the white people to also the non-white, not the Black one, but the brown and others who are coming. And it kind of tapered that. So that's a systemic problem. And I feel like even in ISKCON, we have a systemic problem. One, not only from a Black Lives Matter perspective or Black body perspective, but I see that, ISKCON has now become more of a sort of quote unquote, a Hindu organization more. So having, if you look at the majority of the population, Atlanta, for example, 95% of the people who are being preached to or who are being targeted are all Indian people. I don't get it. Why does he like that? I was in San Jose and it is 99% is Indian people. So it's like Prabhupada left New Vrindavan, or not New Vrindavan, Vrindavan, came to America to bring. And when he was there, he did not, I don't think he decided this is a Black body or this is a white guy or whatever. He just gave Krishna to everyone. So fundamentally, there is a systemic problem within ISKCON we have to target. That's one thing. Second, what I think we have all these committees that ISKCON GBCs do, and they talk for hours and days and months or whatever. But what they don't do is they don't do a particular outreach. There no goal of ISKCON as an organization is to say, let's do an outreach of Black people. Let's do an outreach of non-Indian people. Because what happens is a Black person to preaching to a Black person and an Indian body preaching to Indian body, there's a lot of difference, I think. Eventually you can go and mingle and, as devotees, we may say, oh, you're not a white body, you're not a Black body, or we are all that cannot come in the beginning of preaching. We go too deep into our preaching. We need to do in any political organization, they have an outreach. A Black person is in charge of that community. An Indian body could be in charge of that community or things like that. So, this is a really big topic and I don't want to take too much of everybody's time, but I think, in my opinion, to summarize, it's a systemic problem within the United States from a Black Lives Matter, but become a systemic problem within ISKCON as well. I think that is followed into, and until we make fundamental changes within ISKCON, we may have all these, we need to take the philosophy to the deeper end, but first we gotta hit the foundation, and foundation, we cannot go so deep and call this we gotta hit that people at human level. And anyway, I'm gonna
die. Very nice, Mahaguna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Mother Yashoda, please go.
Thank you. Actually, what Balabhadra Prabhu, Hare Krishna, Hare
Hare Bo, my dear Yashoda.
See you again.
So
wonderful. Mahamuni Prabhu just actually said a lot of what I was going to say. The first thing I wanted to focus on was Balabhadra, I love you. And everything that you said was perfect. But why is that not coming from the GBC? Exactly what Mahaguna just said. And we
Yeah.
have all these GBCs, we have all of these different focus groups. We even have a devotee care program in the GBC. But I'm not hearing what you just said coming from them. And if we want the change, as Mahaguni Prabhu just said, in ISKCON has a systematic problem, then we need to start at the top to change those problems. Otherwise, we can do all of our little pockets here and there, but if there are no resolutions coming to watch what people are saying on the Yasasan, if there's no training going on in diversity to understand how to preach to all of these different groups, I don't even see how are we going to fulfill Srila Prabhupada's mission, which is Lord Chaitanya's mission of every town and village, if we don't know how to talk to everybody in every town and village.
Wow.
And then the other thing too, you were saying about preaching in the Black communities and how possible it is. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj spent 20 years preaching in not just the Black communities, all communities, but focusing on the African American community with the Institute for Applied Spiritual Technology. And if you want to know how successful he was, take a look at all the devotees that he made when doctors, lawyers, teachers, administrators, entrepreneurs, even musicians, all walks of life, all of them having, not all of them, but a lot of them having seen the devotees previously, but not feeling any kind of, not just attraction to them, but any kind of connection to them whatsoever. One great example is Mother Indrani. I think a lot of people know who Mother Indrani was, an older Black-bodied woman who came to the movement, I think in her late 60s or 70s or whatever, a wonderful devotee. She used to tell us how she would see the devotees in New York chanting on her corner every day. And never felt that this was something for her. She never saw any Black bodies in there. She never felt that this was something that would appeal to her. And yet she was a seeker. She traveled to Africa. She traveled all over the place looking for a spiritual program that she could become a part of. And then she saw Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj at Howard University and said, and Haribol, this is it. You know, so, again, I completely 100% agree with everything that Mahaguni Prabhu just said about needing, and yourself needing to focus our attention on these communities that we have neglected for so long, because they want to be part of this. They want to be part of Lord Chaitanya's mission. They want to be part of Srila Prabhupada's family. We're just not opening the door wide enough for them to come in. So I don't know. I don't want to take up more time either, but I just wanted to voice those points.
Well, Drona, can I share a few thoughts with her? Drona Prabhu? It's okay if I share a couple thoughts?
Absolutely. Haryashra, I think also after you wants to also.
Okay. Yeah. And you showed her, you know, my God, how much I love you and how much I appreciate the time we spent together in Atlanta. I'm so proud of you and your daughter, because this ability to articulate these concerns and issues is what's important. So to your point exactly about the GBC, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, I know because I was with him for many GBC presidents meetings in India. He lived in Atlanta as a brahmachari. I spent a lot of time with him. And I know the pain that he went through in trying to focus on the Black community. I know the criticism that he was subjected to, undue criticism, but I also know his determination due to his realization of the importance of what he was doing. So because of his leech-like tenacity, as you said, so many qualified African Americans and white Americans came to Krishna consciousness. So on Sunday, I spoke with our GBC for Philadelphia, and I believe Gita Nagri is, no, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Anuttama's GBC for Gita Nagri, but Harrisburg. Yeah, Harrisburg. So, and I put it to him very strongly, just like I spoke earlier. And I reminded him, and he said, I didn't know you were at that meeting in San Diego with the Roland Company. I said, yeah, because they had two sessions. We were not in the same session. So in that meeting, we had media training. We paid $25,000 for media training for the temple presidents and GBCs how to present Krishna consciousness. So I was one of the only African Americans in the whole group of devotees there. So when I sat down in front of the TV camera that this lady had set up in this beautiful room, and she asked me a few lead-in questions, and then this white American lady looked me dead in the eyes. She said, "Why are there not more black people in your movement?" And I'm telling all of you, as I said last time, I had no answer. I had no answer. So I made up an answer. Oh, black people are looking for economic development right now. They're not so much interested. She said, no, don't tell that lie. You don't go there. That's why you don't have more African Americans. You don't go there. If you went there, you'd have more African Americans. And since that day, that was like 1990 something, I've been focused on trying to develop those communities. And just to give you one real quick other example of how the leaders don't get it, all due respect and love to our leaders because they're trying their best, but sometimes they don't get it. I was speaking regularly at Morehouse College, one of the most well-known black universities in the world. If you haven't heard of Morehouse College, you've been sleeping under a rock, as they might say. So I'm giving regular lectures at Morehouse College. And I told one of the biggest leaders in ISKCON, Maharaj, this is what I'm doing in the black community. And I'm speaking at Morehouse College. He said, that's not so important. What? I was really shocked. So you're right on point, Yashoda. Our leaders, and I was telling Anutama the other day, same things. We need to do this. We need to focus. So he told me, he said, Prabhu, I really appreciate what you all are doing, having this session, bringing all these devotees together. So we should try to express these things to as many of the leaders as we can. I do it all the time. Bir Krishna Swami, Hridayananda Maharaj, everybody. Jayapataka Maharaj really loves the work that I've done in the African American community. So it's kind of incumbent upon us to speak up. We can't be soft anymore. It's almost like Black Lives Matter. So our Krishna consciousness matters. We have to speak up to the leaders do not be shy to express what we're expressing here to the other senior devotees in this movement. It makes a big difference. So I'll stop right there. Thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Haribol, Maharaji.
Hayasha Prabhu, did you want to comment?
Sure, I do. Mother, thank you so very much. You made a point about the GBC and the leaders not being involved, and it needs to come from the top. But as you know, when you're really serious about a revolution, you don't wait. Most times it doesn't come on its own accord from the top. It's the grassroots organization. People who, if there's one person that thinks like you, then there's a couple. And then when you get 3 and 4, you've got a crowd. And all after that, it's called the mob, okay? Or you have a group. So my point is that I don't think that you have to wait for things to come from the top. Black Lives Matter, that organization isn't waiting for the government and for those at the top to hear. Actually, those young kids walking in the street aren't waiting for anyone. They're resolute in their determination and their resolve. And as you can see, it is bringing about change. Every time I hear your daughter speak,
oh yeah,
I think, oh my God, clear, and part 2 is also looking for resolve. So some of those people that were speaking last week, I heard you. What's the resolution? What is the resolve? What do you want? What do you need to do? What do we need to do? I'm just trying to throw things out there. Thank you so very much.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone. We have Sahadev Prabhu speak now, and then after him, Devi Deva Prabhu and Anasuya. Just so out there, if you have your hand raised, that we haven't forgotten about you. So Sahadev Prabhu, please go ahead. You just unmute yourself there.
I think he might be still muted.
It looks like he's on. Oh, he just muted
Yeah,
himself.
he's still muted.
You have to unmute yourself, Prabhu.
maybe we can come back to him.
Yeah. Devi Deva Prabhu? We'll come right back to you, Sahadev Prabhu, right after this. You just have to get yourself unmuted. Devi Deva Prabhu.
Haribol Prabhuji.
Haribol,
Glory.
David.
Haribol Balabhadra. Glories Prabhupada. Haribol Hare Ashwa. I'll try to keep it succinct. I met the devotees in 1970 at an anti-war rally in Detroit. I grew up in Canada, which is basically one of the most multicultural countries in the world. And I watched Detroit burn when Martin Luther King was assassinated from a quarter-mile across the river, which was on the Canadian side. I spent most of my teenage years in Detroit. Was very familiar with the racial tensions, and so I have a long history. What attracted me to Krishna consciousness was the fact that it gave an answer to the racial tensions that you're not that body. And once I had that knowledge, I was pretty colorblind by then anyway, because we dealt with so many nationalities. And there's been a lot of injustice in this world. And I just like to throw out there that the Black community has a long history of injustice. What the Canadians realized and took action on in probably the last 2 decades is the Native Indigenous communities in Canada that had a lot of injustice also, and they've addressed that, and I assume it will take America another century to get to that point of recognizing that. But I just wanted to say that this was, and I presented this to a few senior devotees, this is a great opportunity for preaching. That the only way that people, that all societies, whether they're, the immigration issue or the Black community or the Native Americans or women or some, the disabled, the uneducated, how many different segments of society, is once they understand, they have the knowledge that they're not this body, that we're all spirit soul. And what I would like to propose is that it's a great opportunity. Mount Airy was one of the first segregated communities in America. And it's a perfect opportunity for the Philadelphia Center to reach out. You've got the Lutheran Theological Seminary down the street. You've got a Christian college out your back door. There's a Jewish synagogue very close to Allen's Lane on Lincoln Drive. There's the Unitarians. There's a number of other religious organizations. And with our new building, we have an opportunity to invite people and put together something, spiritual solutions to racial, injustice or racial segregation or racial issues, or however you want to coin a phrase for it. And I think it would be a great opportunity for inviting the community into our house of worship and to put together a spiritual solution from many various points. I think all religious traditions accept the existence and the soul, and it would be a good opportunity for us to actually do something. And just in terms of the GBC and the society's focus, 90%, I went through the Hinduization of ISKCON in many temples, and it was mainly a financial issue. The Indians had the money, and our society was people were getting married and not living in the temple, and this was an easy way to get money to fund the temple's budgets, and that was basically why it all changed. But I've been involved in the New York Renaissance after the whole Skirmahorn Temple fiasco, and there's a Renaissance going on in New York, and one of the big discussions is segmenting our audience into not just the Black community, but the immigrant communities in New York, the Hispanic communities in New York. New York is about 64% non-white. It's
Wow.
So we're missing 2/3 of the population by not segmenting it into those different. There's Haitian communities. There's the whole Caribbean community in New York, and it's a lost opportunity. But on the other hand, this is the beginning of a golden age, and I see that there's a lot of successes for the age of our movement. I wouldn't criticize too much in terms of we have a lot of work to do, but I also think a lot of work has been done, and I think we need to appreciate and respect all that work that's been done, and but at the same time we have to be honest, and we have a lot of work to do. Prabhupada gave us almost an impossible mission to systematically propagate spiritual knowledge to society at large. That's like 9 billion people. It's I don't think if you gave the U.S. military that mission statement to go do that they could accomplish it. So we should be, respectful of all the work that's been done, but at the same time recognize that we have a long way to go, and we probably will never see this in our lifetime, the spiritualization of society at large. We have about another 9,400 years in that. So we have to see it in the big view. But anyway, my comment was, if we really want to do something, it's a great preaching opportunity. That's my view on it.
Thank you, Devi Deva Prabhu.
Haribo.
Haribo.
It was helpful. Thank you for that contribution. Balabhadra Hayashi, you want to make any comments before we go to the next?
No, very well said. Thank you very much, Devi Deva. Thank you.
Sahadev Prabhu, did you able to get unmuted? There you go.
Can't hear him.
He's unmuted, but your audio's Sahadev Prabhu, your audio doesn't seem to be connecting. We can't hear you.
No, I still can't hear him.
Anasuya, we're going to jump to you, and then we'll circle back around again.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, accept my obeisances, all grace to Prabhupada.
Haribo.
Nice to see you, Balabhadra Prabhu. It's been, I think, 20-something years. Long time. I want to share a few things. This is a very interesting topic that I have been keeping up with and have been kind of quiet. And I wanted to share my experiences. It's interesting that we talk about this because when I first joined Krishna consciousness in the early 90s in US, I think finding an Indian being a devotee in ISKCON was kind of rare in US at that time. And I remember when again, being, having a guru, black body guru was like, are you crazy, Anasuya? So that is the mood. I personally, from a personal point of view, being in ISKCON, I experienced it from both races. Because from the Indian race, I experienced so much racism because to them, it's like, first of all, why are you married to a black man? Parikshit. Second of all, why you have a black guru, right? So I got really, I got the dirty looks from the Indians, and I'm an Indian. But I think for me is I'm not a traditional Indian from India. I'm actually from Singapore. So I grew up in a very multicultural, multiracial country. And from on the other side, I also got dirty looks from the black devotees, some of them thinking, why are you married to a black man? I'm thinking, my God, so marrying a black man is a problem here. So I think I should go back to my country, So I went through a lot of that. And I remember when I moved and when I got initiated, my spiritual master told me, Anasuya, you're the only Indian disciple I have, my first Indian disciple. So you have a tall order. I never knew what he meant until I moved to Gitanagari. And I remember for 21 years, living in Gitanagari was beautiful and blissful, except one thing that I personally felt, and I had this talk one time with one of my senior god sister, a very open discussion, that I always felt like I was looked upon as someone that I am not. Because I was clumped with pariksha, not as who I am. So I went through my 21 years of a dilemma that I had to find myself. It took me 21 years to find myself, because being in a different body in Gitanagari, there were hardly any Indians there, and being married to an African, which was great, but it was a lot of, soul searching. But I remember one thing that made me go through that journey, Prabhu, is my father always told me this: clean your house before you clean your neighbor's house.
Wow.
And he drilled it through my head. Till today, he'll tell me, clean your house before you clean your neighbor's house. So what I started thinking is, you know what, I don't care what the world thinks about me. I'm just gonna be the example. And I really liked what Devi Deva Prabhu, I think, or was it Harivarsha Prabhu, said that, we don't have to wait from the top. We can just be the examples ourselves. And I also remember another incident, 99, when we had the Columbine school shooting. And I remember Bhaktitirtha Swami just got back from one of his trips, and we were having darshan at his house in Gitanagari. And when he walked through the door, he was not smiling the way he used to. And he had a very straight face. And I remember that when he spoke, he was so affected with the Columbine school shooting, really affected because of the lives that were lost. And I remember all of us, and at the time, Gitanagari, Yashoda Mataji can testify, it's a redneck town. Gitanagari is completely redneck at the time. I think it's a little bit loose right now, but it was redneck. I was at gunpoint. Wow. In Gitanagari with my husband going out in town. So but one thing he drilled through our heads, he says, you be the example. And I remember him saying, if you are in a cash register at the Wise Market, and in front of you is a white guy or a white girl, he says, you just say, good day, ma'am. And I'm thinking, will they not shoot me? He says, you be the example, because, and he said, you just be the example. And Krishna's arrangement, I think that's why I married to an African. Actually, I was saying that I think what worked for me is being the example, because till this very day, I go through that. When I go down Harrisburg town, the downtown, I get looks from all races to share what was my experience being in ISKCON, how I had to face the whole thing from all races, being the only Indian in Gitanagari. It was very difficult for me because I wasn't allowed to be myself. I had to be someone else that I'm not. And it took me 21 years to find who I am, to really appreciate what I am and why I am in this body, and why my guru said, you got a tall order, and but yeah, I think it's time for us to be the examples ourselves rather than wait from the top. And small acts of kindness,
yes, Yes.
works, you know, and it's not going to be a jackpot every time. That, you know, then is like heaven on earth, I feel. One jackpot might be bad and the other jackpot might be good, and we just take one day at a time. So that is my experience that I have been trying to help myself go through this. And my challenges being in ISKCON, even though, you know, being in an Indian body was also challenging for me, but I had to grow up and come out of it and move on. And I just wanted to just share my 2 cents. And if
Thank
I've
you.
said any offenses, please do forgive me.
Thank you. It's beautiful.
I wanted to say thank you, Mother Ansuya, for sharing. If anybody has anything that they would like to add or respond to somebody that has spoken, it's hard to kind of have conversation when you have a large group over Zoom, but we want to encourage that. So if you do have something that one of the people that previously went before that you want to get further clarification on or follow up on, please do that.
Did we get some idea yet?
Go ahead.
See, I don't know if I'm. This is what happens when you have the conversation. The conversation actually gives a clear explanation of the different problems. But collectively, we're seeing and we're speaking. But individually, the change must manifest within ourselves. This is called taking responsibility. So there may be a man who looks at me and thinks in a very derogatory way and calls me some bad name. I can guarantee you that that bad name is not going to make me feel bad, because I'm already convinced inside that that ain't me. So that's my conviction. So he's going to have to change my conviction. But aside from that, we have a process, not just through attitude and ego. We have a process which is purifying, illuminating, and it's real. So before I get to the fact of Jiva Rupa Hare Krishna Nityadasa, I may not be there, but to the extent that we associate with the devotees, it begins to chip away these different misconceptions of who we are and how people are perceiving us. I may not be able to change the way other people think about me, but I can change both the way I think about them and the way I view myself. And this is the beginning of the resolve of dealing with what Prabhupada calls the skin disease. We have to find ourselves within. So I'm just moving on. I'm just interjecting it. So.
And Drone, I just have one quick quote. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because we can see all of this as a problem, either dealing with the GBC, dealing with the public, all that. So there's this wonderful Christian quote that I quoted all the time, and I just found it. It says that it is true that when God sends you a gift, he often wraps it up as a problem. It looks like a problem, but actually it's a gift from Krishna. All of this stuff that's happening in the world today is this. I mean, just look at what Prabhupada had to deal with when he came here. It was all a big problem, a huge mess. And he sorted it out with Krishna consciousness. He saw it as Krishna's mercy. So I think that we have to change our own consciousness and see all of this as an opportunity to spread Krishna consciousness, as Nityananda and Haridas Thakur did. When they saw Jagai Madai, they said, here is a gift from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because Chaitanya sent them out to preach. And in fact, Nityananda was a little upset sometimes, and Haridas was a little upset. Why Lord Chaitanya is sending us like this? But they understood this is a gift for us to lift these people up. And then the world will see how powerful is Srila Prabhupada and his followers. So I just wanted to share that thought.
Thank you, Bellabhaja Prabhu. Sahadev, are you good to go?
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Can you hear me? Hare Krishna. Well, thanks for the opportunity. I just wanted to say a few things about what Balabhadra Prabhu said at the beginning of this meeting. that I think it's very important as devotees we discuss this Black Lives Matter, because out of the 8,400,000 species of life, the human form is the only form that has access to serving Shri Krishna.
Yeah.
And for us to become human beings means that we rise above the bodily concepts of life. And oftentimes I realize in ISKCON, we tend to be so spiritual that we ignore the material circumstances that we find ourselves in. For instance, I'm in a male's body, and I know I'm not a body. Yet when I'm using a public restroom, I see male and female, I cannot say I'm not a body, so I'm going to use the female restroom. I use the male restroom because that is where I find myself in. I am in this Black male body. And so one thing that actually helped ISKCON progress so well in South Africa was when the movement was first introduced in South Africa, and people saw white people bowing before a Black person. Sri Prabhupada gave us the training. The first time you come in contact with a devotee, you pay your dandavats. So paying obeisances to each other, we're not paying to the body per se, we're paying to the spirit soul. But because we are in this body and people seeing white bodies bowing before Black bodies, it made a whole lot of difference. And so we cannot say that we need to ignore Black Lives Matter or talking about racial disparities and just be talking about Radha Krishna topics. We are not yet human beings, and you want to talk about Radha Krishna topics? And so to me, this is a very important platform. Like Mother Yashoda Mai initially was saying, that if this understanding and feeling can get to the GBC, and the GBC makes a very strategic decision of trying to build on all bodies matter, and that we treat all bodies as equal, that is going to help the movement in a very long way. I'll give myself as an example. When I first moved to the US, of course, I was in Gita Nagari Temple. And we talk about Black being like disrespected. But even if you are Black and you still have an accent, from my personal experience, having an accent is almost synonymous to stupidity. Because I have an accent, when I'm talking to somebody, you look at, oh, you have an accent. I say, yes, I have an accent. Then they will walk away. When I first moved to Gita Nagari, I was given the service of washing pots. And I washed pots every single day for almost a year and a half. And then one time there was a situation, one devotee was traveling to Harrisburg from Gita Nagari to preach. That was when Gita Nagari had started the Namahata program in Harrisburg. And he was going alone. He didn't want to go by himself, so he asked me to join him. So I joined him, and I couldn't wash the pots. The following day, some senior devotees came to the temple, saw the pots unwashed, and instead of chastising me or doing whatever with me because I was the person scheduled to do the washing, they started blaspheming my spiritual master. That my spiritual master was not training his disciples properly, and we've made Radha Krishna's temple so dirty. So I told them I'm no more going to wash the pots. And when I said I was not going to wash the pots, they tried to rationalize, they tried to rotate. They were asking devotees, this devotee washes on Monday, The other devotee washes Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So they came to me and I told them I'm not washing the pots. And I told them this is the clear example. When I was washing the pots, I washed for over a year and a half. Nobody ever said, okay, this devotee must be tired. Let's change him for somebody else to help. Because you thought that I'm Black, I'm from Africa, I'm from the jungle. So it's a long way to go. And I stopped washing the pots till today. I haven't washed pots since then. I am kind of militant to some extent. But the point I'm trying to arrive at is that it is very important that we discuss this racial disparities, because even though we may claim that we are not this body, but we still act on the bodily platform. So not addressing it is a big hypocrisy. And thank you for establishing this program and platform whereby I believe and pray that somehow it can get more and more attention and something positive comes out of this. Hare Krishna.
Haribo, thank you.
Thank you, Sahadev Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
I'm looking at the time. I think we're going to take one more. We're at 8:40, 8:47. We want to be respectful of everybody's time before it gets too late. So Mother Ladini, you've been waiting patiently. Please go.
Hello, Prabhu. Can you hear me?
Haribo.
Hello, everyone. I again wanted to say thank you for again hosting this platform. I think it's really important. So I realize that I'm at the end, so I'll try to be brief and succinct. But I have been doing a lot of reading and contemplation. You know, I think something that I want to bring attention to is that this movement that is happening with Black Lives Matter. I think it's important that we're having this discussion now. But I also want to just to make folks aware that this isn't new. This kind of almost racial awakening that we're having collectively as a country. If you have been in a Black body, you have not had the ability to maybe ignore the kind of grand implications. And again, it affects people differently, but this is not a new thing. And I think that's something that I want to just be very clear on, is that I think this is now a wonderful time that we're all choosing to use this space to have these discussions. And I'm just mentioning that because I think the way that we frame this is also really important. And something that I've been doing for myself is realizing that, yes, I'm a Black person and I live a Black experience, but I also am not as well versed in historical context and all of the various things. So I've assigned myself homework. And so I am doing a reading and listening to lectures and TED Talks by people who have experience. So in the same way that, you know, doctors have to go to school to learn medicine, lawyers have to go to school to learn law, you know, there are people who have the training to talk about how systemic racism operates in this country. And I realize I don't have that background. So I think it's important, if we want to have a real and genuine conversation about this, and also come at it in a way that is going to be productive, because I think we can talk all day about how terrible injustice is, and that's absolutely true. But I think we also have to have some framework or understanding of what we're dealing with, because I think once we have that framework or understanding, then we can start to really look at solutions. And something that I want to just quickly bring up while I have this opportunity, I think there are a lot of resources that are out there, but one resource that I really recommend two books from this one author that I've been really, I highly suggest you all look up. His name is Ibram X. Kendi. He is a professor of history, and he has written books, and he is talking about the ways in which racism has permeated our global society, and specifically America. So he has two books that I would really recommend as a starting point for everybody to read, as a way to individually, because we're talking about grassroots and how we can't necessarily do everything from the top down. So one thing that I'm saying is, I think it's important that we all personally take responsibility to start looking at the work that we need to do within ourselves. So I'm going to just do two plugs. I'm obviously not getting paid for this, but this first book is How to Be an Anti-Racist. And so basically, again, this history professor has written about what structural racism looks like. And it's easy for us to think, oh, I live in a diverse community. Oh, I'm friends with, married to, work with people from all backgrounds. I can't be racist or hold racist ideas. And unfortunately, that's not true. Just because the ways in which this has permeated our global consciousness is very insidious and very subtle. And so I think we have to take ego out of it. And I think that's something that I think we really struggle with, not just in ISKCON, but also within just society at large. Our ego is in the way, saying, I know everything that there is to know about these things, so I don't need to do any further delving within my own self. And I recognize that I myself have an ego. Everybody does if you live in this material world. And it's identifying what that is and working towards how to change that. So that's the first book that I highly recommend everybody read and use that as a tool to start building up a more of a consciousness, because that is one way that we will be able to start to connect with folks again. And for those of you who are not afraid of a bit of heavy reading, I haven't gotten started with this yet, but this one is another book, and it's called Stamped from the Beginning. And this is a 500-year history of racism, not in America, in the whole entire world. It actually starts out with Portugal, which is where the first kind of racist idea, as it can be identified in history, was kind of solidified, and how that has been permeated not just through America, but South Africa, through Africa, through Europe, through South America, everywhere that you go in the world holds some sort of hierarchy where they can say one person is more important than the other, and there are ways in which that hierarchy works. And so this is really a book that addresses the various ways in which hierarchy is established, and ways from 500 years ago to now that we can start to identify, okay, what does this look like? And so again, those are just two books, and I understand that books are not everyone's jam, so there are plenty of YouTube videos and things like that. But my contribution here is to say, this is not all going to be solved in a day. And I think it's really important that we start now working like, it's going to be solved maybe in 5 years if we work every day at it, and hopefully it will be solved in 10. But if we kind of work at a pace where we're assuming that we can, go slow and start maybe 5 years from now, it will never be solved. So we have to really commit to doing the work and to being uncomfortable. And I think that's also something that I want to bring up, is that this work is not easy. And I think we are going to have to sit with discomfort and sit with unease and sit with feeling overwhelmed and unsure of how we kind of fit into this narrative. And only when we have that sense of discomfort are we going to say, okay, now I can be uncomfortable enough to make some changes, because we don't change when we're comfortable. And so I think that these are just two steps that I am personally working on to create a better understanding of how I can understand the situation. So that way, when I'm talking to others and I'm talking to folks who are looking to do some additional work, we can at least come to have some sort of basis of understanding that we can continue to build on. So again, that's my time. And thank you again, everybody, for being here, for sharing. I think it's really important to have so many of these different viewpoints. So thank you for giving me some space.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mother. Ayasha Prabhu. Go ahead.
Mother, you said a lot, you know, and I mean, it's just too much for me to try to dissect right now. I'm going to pull a couple points that I think are very powerful in explaining and bringing forth information or sources of information, which would better let us understand this. One thing you said is that we had to take away the ego. We had to get rid of the ego. And so that's difficult because so much is built on ego. The problem that we're experiencing is built on the ego, or what we call more clearly the false ego. So this problem is because someone's ego has decided to manipulate, you know, based on pigmentation, economics, you know, it just went all through. So that's the one thing. What is your resolve for cleaning up the ego? And the other point is that it's a world situation. Right now we hear the Black Lives Matter. It's because it's our turn. You know, it was the gay rights turn. It was the women's rights turn. It is our turn, I believe, in history for the African American to actually get a type of just due. But the problem, collectively, I've heard, is the problem in Africa, the problem in India, you know, the problem in Europe. So this problem, this racial problem, is going to knock on everyone's door. We're all involved, and we're being singled out. I also feel, and I want you to explain your understanding. I feel that part of the intensity of the youth, of the young white and multicolored people today, is that they understand that this problem has been, it has been just too long used on the African American. But all of us are going to suffer, or either suffering now, or we're opportunity next. So I want you to, you know, I just want some feedback. I think that without a process of purification, especially with us coming from a Christian conscious background, how do we get rid of the false ego? And how do we work on the problem, but understanding that the close connection of the material influences, the karma, the guna, yet so many things are still in play there. How do we deal with this?
All right, well, is this a question that you want me to answer?
I just want you to take any part. I told you, you gave me so much information that it was not possible. My first point is your point of the ego. So much is driven by ego. That ego is a contaminated aspect of the reality. How can you deal with ego without purification? With false ego, how can we deal with that? Can we manipulate the situation ourselves to bring about a just and fairness?
So I think, again, like you said, it's a difficult topic, and I am not positioning myself as any kind of authority on this. But what I will say is, you know, I grew up in the movement, right? So I have studied Bhagavad Gita verses from birth until my mom, you know, held Bhagavad Gita classes, and you know, we would have to, you know, memorize verses and learn scripture and things like that. So one thing that has always stuck out to me is a verse, and I'm not remembering the Sanskrit right now, that says that we should be more humble than a blade of grass. And what does that look like in practical terms? What does being more humble than a blade of grass look like? How do we even apply that to our daily lives? And something that I as I've been listening and talking with folks and really trying to mull over what that understanding is, it means that it's okay. So it's twofold, right? Because on one hand we're saying Black Lives Matter, and so we're positioning this kind of hierarchy and saying that this is a group that we are intent on focusing on right now. This is a group that is drawing attention. So is that not being, ego, and that's being bloated and all of that? And to that I would say, yes, but so is everything else, So every group that we come across has some sense of ego, of self-worth. And I think you made a great distinction, Prabhu, when you said there's ego and then there's false ego. I don't think it's bad to have a sense of identity, of self-worth, because when you have that identity and self-worth, I feel like we're more likely to be able to positively associate our experiences, the things that we're doing, we're able to attract people. But when we have false ego, I think we push people away, even when it is unconscious. And so this whole movement is about bringing people together. It's about compassion. It's about love. And so when we're hearing folks talk about, and also I'd like to say, you brought something up. I think Kimberly Crenshaw, who's a Black woman feminist thinker, she brought up this idea of intersectionality. So I think that's a whole different topic, but it's not just one thing, right? So we're focusing on Black Lives Matter right now, but you mentioned the LGBTQ community, you talk about women's rights, all of those things. All of those are important, and they all intersect. Obviously there are, Black people who identify in all those spaces, all of it makes sense. But I think false ego is really where we look at somebody else and say, I can dismiss your problems because where I am is more important, or where I am is more comfortable. I'm comfortable where I am. I'm comfortable with how things are. And so even though I hear you crying out in distress and in pain, I am comfortable with where I am. So I'm going to push you away to whatever extent. And I think that's the false ego talking to the point where it's built this bubble around us that's saying nothing can touch me, not any kind of compassion, nothing else is kind of penetrating that bubble. So again, sorry, my thoughts are all over the place, but I think we have to start by recognizing that we have that bubble around us and doing work to pop it or to start to break it apart. And I think we can only do that when we look within ourselves and say, what do I lose? What do I lose by noticing and hearing that other people are struggling? What do I lose by saying, you know what, somebody is living an experience that I might not be familiar with, but that doesn't mean it's any less valuable or important. And I think once we start to identify those questions, I think the false ego can't really stand up to that, because we are forcing ourselves to do a deep dive. And false ego doesn't want us to look inward. It is purely about projecting outwards. And so when we turn that focus inside and say, what am I doing? What am I doing that may be harming even unintentionally others? That's when we can start to break that down and start to have a better understanding of how we can help and move forward. So sorry, that was a lot, but I hope that was helpful.
All right, thank you. Jonah?
Thank you, Mother Nagini. Thank you for Haryasha, did you want to say something just to wrap it up?
The point is, first of all, I want to thank her. I want you to know that I appreciate the fact that you're really putting it out there. And I also think that I can't honestly answer you in a nice, qualified way in 2 minutes. I always had problem with humbler than a great blade of grass also. But humility is a manifestation of knowledge. It's one of the items of knowledge. And we can go there too. And the other thing about the false conception of self is that there's different layers. But I like one thing that that Krishna says in the Gita. And that's simple. He says, if you remain conscious of me, you will be able to cross over all the obstacles of life by my grace. Much Chita Sarvadurgaini. So whatever our resolve is, I think Krishna consciousness is definitely going to will have to be incorporated. But to neglect hearing the things that you're talking about and pretending it doesn't matter, that I think is also a part of the problem. I can't go any further because I won't be able to do justice to the things you said in a few minutes. Or maybe you can think about how there can be more dialogue, how we can have more participation. I need a little time to think. I want you to think also. I want to thank you, Sahadev, and all of you. Thank you so very much, Mother.
Hare Krishna. I'm in the uncomfortable position of having to be the timekeeper. And when the conversation just seems to be starting to heat up, unfortunately, I have to call time out. We're after 9 o'clock, and again, at a certain point, we want to be respectful of people's time. Again, we have a couple people that do want to share. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get to you tonight. We do want to continue this, and we want to continue it in a progressive way. What we've heard tonight is a common theme, I think. I've heard that common theme. I've heard some practical things that can be done, things that need a little more structure to them, but practical ways, such as going out into the communities and actually starting preaching events, outreaching, connecting, inviting people to our temple, whether they are individuals or other community leaders, and discuss the issues of race and how we can solve those problems within each of our religions. If we get, through interfaith dialogue, to talk about these with other interfaith leaders, other faith-based leaders within our communities, work together hand in hand. But then there's also the hard work, the deep work that I think we need to get into a little bit further. And I would like that to kind of be the guide into our next conversation. And that is to kind of show some of the ways in which racism begins to appear or does appear, in our communities that we may not be able to see. It came up at the last meeting that, just not feeling comfortable going into the temple and just thinking, maybe I don't really feel like I belong here. Trying to dissect those things so that we can become, as Krishna devotees, we can open up our family to everyone, so that we can fulfill that prophecy that Srila Prabhupada has built a house for the whole world to live in. And we want to progress this conversation. A door has opened up in the world for us to allow us to have this conversation at this point in history. Thank you, Ladini, for bringing it up, that this isn't just something new. This has gone on for, centuries. But a door has opened up and has allowed us to, to bring about substantial change. I know here in ISKCON Philadelphia, we're committed to making that change. We're committed to climbing that mountain. It's not going to be easy, but we're committed to bringing our community to a place where everybody feels comfortable coming to worship Krishna. And we implore, we invite, we express it. We want other communities to do that as well. And we want everybody, and wherever they are, to help. We need to help each other to be able to dissect and understand what are the systematic ways we can start to change things. So again, I'll leave us with tonight where we started, and the theme was strengthening Srila Prabhupada's family. Removing the barriers that prevent individuals from coming closer to their eternal nature of being Krishna conscious. So thank you all for coming. We will announce our next meeting. It probably won't be for another 2, maybe 3 weeks. Since we are family, I want to ask everybody on Wednesday morning to say a prayer for Haryashwar Prabhu. He's going to be going under the knife. He's going to have surgery, and we want to send our prayers to you. So everything goes successful and you have a speedy recovery. And then we also want to close it with a prayer to our beloved Bhakti True Swami Maharaj. Balabhadra Prabhu, would you please lead us in that prayer as we close out this evening?
So the prayer that has been suggested is the same one that was given for Srila Prabhupada when he would be ill back in the 70s. And that basically goes like this. My dear Lord Krishna, if you so desire, please restore the health of His Holiness Bhakti True Swami so that he can continue to lead us and inspire us to take Krishna consciousness to all the people of this world. Please give him your blessings. Please protect him, Lord. Please give your mercy to His Holiness Bhakti True Swami. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribo.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, everyone. Thanks, everybody. Hare Krishna.
Haribol family.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Haribol.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.